Good morning. Over the next few sessions we're going to learn how to make a flower box very similar to this one. The tools you're going to need are sharp pencil, you need a ruler or tape measure, tri-square, you'll need a sawing device, either a handsaw or a jigsaw. If you're using a jigsaw, remember to get some goggles. I've also got a quick release clamp to help hold the wood. You'll need a plane, we've got a file, and then to finish off you're going to need some screws and either a screwdriver, but I'm going to use a drill to do that. And also in the background you'll notice I've also got a bench hook as well. Right, for the purpose of this exercise, the flower box I'm going to make is designed for a small little flower pot like this. So I'm going to make a small square shaped little flower box. So I need to measure out some pieces which are 40 centimeters long. So I'm just going to make a little mark by the 40, and we need a nice line which is perpendicular, so I'm going to use this tri-square. Put the brass side against the side of the piece of wood and slide it up to your line. Doesn't matter which side of the tri-square you use, it's still going to be right angles. Draw yourself a nice neat line, like so. And now to saw that line, first time round I'm going to use a normal handsaw. So get yourself a bench hook, put it in the vise. If you don't have a vise, it should be okay if you just rest it against the side of a table. To help hold this piece of wood nice and flat, stop it rocking, I've actually got a second bench hook which I'll put under this side. Just remember, when you start using a saw, whether it's a tenon saw or a handsaw, just to use your thumb as a guide and just drag the saw back 3 times to give yourself a nice groove. Once you've got a groove, then you can move your hand away and you can start sawing properly. You need that groove, because if you don't make it a groove first of all, your saw might bounce around and end up cutting your thumb, so you need to be careful. Okay? When you're sawing, you want your saw, your hand, your elbow and your shoulder all in a nice straight line. Stand to one side, nice steady long strokes. You shouldn't have to push down too hard, just let the saw do the cutting. When you get close to the end, the perfect scenario is to have a friend just to help hold the wood, just to lift the weight, to stop the wood from cracking. As you can see, I'm by myself, so I'm going to have to take my time and be careful. There we go. There's one piece. So we need 2 pieces which are 40 centimeters long, so I'm going to use this to measure out my next piece. Remember, when we use this as a measuring guide, don't have it in that direction, because at the bottom where we were sawing, you're often left with this part here called a crown, which can be quite rough. So turn the piece of wood over, make sure the end is flush, and then use your pencil to draw your line. And we do exactly the same again. 3 nice long strokes to give us as a groove, and then we can start sawing. Go. There's 2 pieces. And now the other 2 sides are going to be 35 centimeters long. If if you don't have a tri-square, one thing you can do, with most hand saws, they actually have a built-in tri-square for you, because a builder on a building site tends not to carry too many tools around, so it means his toolbox will be very heavy. So what you can do, put the edge of the handle against your piece of wood, and then just draw a line using the back of the blade, like so. For my fourth piece, which is still going to be 35 centimetres, I'm actually going to use the jigsaw, so I'll demonstrate that. Still measure out the wood in the same way, so I'm going to use this piece, do a nice straight line. However, when we use a jigsaw, we do want to hold this down nice and firmly. If you've got a friend that can hold it down, that's one option. I'm going to use some sash clamps, some G clamps, sorry. Put it sideways. These ones are called quick release clamps. If we push that lever, I can then pull that open and then squeeze the grips to hold it in place. One there. There's the other one. When you're using a jigsaw, you need to be very careful, because that blade can chop your finger very, very easily. One thing I often show people is if you actually look at your finger, imagine the bone inside of your skeleton, finger is roughly the same size as a pencil. If I just demonstrate this, as you can see, it chops the pencil very easily. In the same way, it's light to cut your finger just as easily. So you do need to respect this little tool. Very, very useful, but can be very dangerous. And because of that, I always suggest that you put two hands on the jigsaw. A common mistake is where people try and hold the piece of wood, and then without realising, they chop through their fingers. And it has been known, and I have got links to websites showing qualified carpenters actually chopping their fingers off, with years of experience making mistakes. So please don't be one of those culprits. That's why I'm using some clamps here, and both hands are going on the jigsaw. One hand's going to go on the handle so I can press the trigger. The other hand goes on top just to help apply some downward pressure. When you do start a jigsaw, it's best to start with the blade away from the wood. If the blade is touching the wood, it sometimes makes the saw bounce up and down. So get it going first and then follow your line. If you are using a jigsaw, it's always good to wear a pair of goggles, just to protect your eyes from any of that sawdust that might be flying around. When you're cutting with a jigsaw, your main job is to keep this part of the saw, what we call the table, flat on the piece of wood. You don't want to allow the saw to rock backward and forwards or tip side to side. Keep it nice and flat on the wood. Whenever you're finished using a jigsaw, it's always a good idea to unplug it, just to make sure you don't press the trigger by accident and have any accidents. Next piece, I need a 75 centimetre. What we're going to do now is we actually need to cut a piece of this decking board in half. Because if you look at this flower box, I have one piece of decking board there, and then we have a half a piece across the bottom section. So we need to make a piece long enough for the flower box, and then we will chop it in half. So 75 centimetres. Okay. I'll use the jigsaw again, so we'll clamp it down nice and securely. Right, as I mentioned with this piece, we need to cut this in half. So, we'll put this on an angle. What we're going to do, we're going to cut straight down that middle groove. You don't need to measure it, you can just use your own judgment, and you go straight down that middle groove. Notice when I'm using this jigsaw, I'm trying to keep it close to my body. I'm not standing back here and then reaching. As soon as you start reaching, you tend to lean on the saw and put pressure on it. And if anything was to fall, you might end up on top of the saw. So it's good to have a nice strong base with your feet and then just move your body with the saw. Stopping now, you'll be careful where the end of your bench is. So, unclip this, turn it round, we'll do the other side. There we go. As you can see, what often happens when you're using a jigsaw is it's not actually perfectly straight. So what we need to do is now tidy that up using a plane.